As we've talked about before, Malcolm in the Middle can occasionally veer into the territory of weird or creepy even. Like when Malcolm gets used physically by a woman more than double his age and then immediately gets tossed out like yesterday's garbage, or like Craig keeping security tapes from the Lucky Aid, which is implied to have footage of random women on them, and I'd definitely rather not know what he was doing with that. But every other weird thing, moment, or episode in my mind doesn't even hold a candle to the deeply disturbing plot in Season 4, Episode 14, Hal's Friend. And the specific plot I'm talking about is the one that tackles the relationship between Dabney and his mother, a relationship that's heavily implied to be deeply wrong. It is honestly the only episode of Malcolm in the Middle that made me genuinely want to shut it off at times due to how gross it felt. However, at the same time, the other plots in this episode are super interesting and funny, and also crazy in their own ways, and so that certainly helps offset it. In said other plots, we have Hal acting stupid as he drunkenly ruins his own home with his friend while Lois is out of town, which Hal's plot goes pretty hard here and really shows off how dim-witted and easily influenced he can be at times. And we also see Dewey using his mother's absence to manipulate Reese to do things he wants, seeing it as payback for all of the terrible things that Reese has been doing to him. There's also one of the strangest Francis storylines of all time that's pretty funny, but we'll get into that later. Now, I also very quickly just want to address the fact that I know most of you were probably expecting content related to the new mini-series that just dropped a couple days ago. Unfortunately, I just got around to watching it not too long ago, and it takes a little time to write and edit these videos, so ultimately you can expect my review of Life's Still Unfair sometime on Sunday, April 19th or Monday, April 20th. But I am going to be posting the first part of our reaction to the miniseries over on the Patreon soon, so if you're not a Patreon member, now is a great time to join. You can join for as little as $2 a month and get all of our content ad-free, plus extra content like these episode reactions. That's patreon.com/smokingsessions. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and now let's get into the Season 4 episode, Hal's Friend. The episode opens up with the acknowledgement that Lois will not appear in this episode. The boys and Hal have had to figure out a mechanism to survive without Lois, which seems to mean they've resorted to just eating instant meals like cereal and TV dinners, and they never use any dishes that require washing, including like cups or glasses, meaning they're all hitting the orange juice straight from the bottle one after another, which I usually don't care about, but here it looks particularly nauseating. Once their morning meal is over though, they just swipe everything on the table into a garbage bag, which, I mean, hey, it's efficient, I'll give them that. Also, a little backstory, the reason that Lois wasn't in this episode is because Jane Kaczmarek was on maternity leave in real life. She was actually pregnant through much of the series, and they found clever ways to hide her baby bump with camera angles, clothing tricks, or for example, having her hold a laundry basket in front of her bump with the side cut out so it would look completely natural and it would cover it up. Anyway, just a little behind the scenes. We then get a comment from Hal that Lois wants Reese to sweep the leaves off the garage roof before she gets back, and Reese proclaims that she can't order him around from afar, but Hal tells him to listen.
And Reese, she wanted you to sweep the leaves off the garage roof when you get home from school today.
What? But today's the one day that Allison's parents aren't home to interfere with her homework.
Reese, your mother...
This isn't fair. Mom can't control us when she's not even here.
Nobody is being controlled by your mother.
This is where Dewey gets one of his evil genius plans, which we will come back to in a second. At the same time, Hal proclaims that his old college buddy is coming over to hang out, Larry, and that the boys would love him. However, Hal is very clear that Lois is not to know about this under any circumstances. Which, if you know anything about Hal and Lois, you should already know that this is definitely foreshadowing something not good. Next, we get introduced to the storyline that really caused me to make this video. We see Malcolm and Stevie at school where Mrs. Hooper, the mother of their peer Dabney, appears looking like the Wicked Witch of the Midwest. And of course, she exclaims that she's trying to find her son. Stevie and Malcolm say they don't know where he is because his mother gave him a note to excuse him from gym by using some weird allergy, which is clearly a very smothering thing to do. She just doesn't want him engaging in sports because she thinks his just dangerous probably. But while she's there, she asks Stevie and Malcolm if they'll be coming to Dabney's birthday, and that they aren't to have any punk haircuts or racy outfits. And yes, that is a direct quote.
I suppose you boys are coming to Dabney's birthday party tonight?
Yeah, sure.
Just a little reminder, I don't want either of you showing up with any punk hairdos or racy outfits.
Which Stevie and Malcolm do say that they'll go. Now, if you're not really familiar with the character Dabney, I think you need a little backstory, but he really is fairly simple up until this episode. Dabney is a Krellboyne, which is a name derived from the 1960s film Little Shop of Horrors, and is the nickname for the nerdy, socially awkward advanced class that Malcolm enters reluctantly in season 1. While each of the Krellboynes have their own little quirks and oddities, Dabney in particular is shown just to be a wimp and a mama's boy, yet ironically he gets bullied by everyone including his own mother, and he never really stands up to anybody including her. For example, in season 1 episode 8, Krellboyne Picnic, we see that after Malcolm dazzles the crowd with his math skills, Dabney's mother scolds him for just not being more like Malcolm.
Why can't you do that? Cellular mitosis. What are we paying your tutor for?
Or another example, we have the next scene in this episode where Mrs. Hooper does find Dabney, but she finds him getting bullied while literally under another student's shoe. When Mrs. Hooper gets the boy to stop, she picks Dabney up and then scolds him for not cowering and tucking hard enough. Which, hey, dumbass, you're the reason your child has 0 social skills and will never move up the social ladder. And I can say that with my whole chest because he's still super awkward and life's still unfair 2 decades later. But I digress. Let's talk about the other plots and then we'll come back to this one. Also, I do put chapters on these. I know some people complain that I skip around. You can skip to whatever part you want with those chapters. But anyway, let's move on. Moving back over to Dewey and Reese, we see that with no parents around, Reese is making Dewey's life hell. Which honestly, Dewey gets the brunt of things more than anyone else, so I feel awful for Dewey most of the time. But while he's being tortured by Reese and the phone rings, he gets a genius idea. Just tell Reese that Lois is on the phone asking him to do something, and considering Reese is so stupid, he pretty much goes through with everything, no questions asked. And again, while I do feel for Dewey, I really like Dewey, and I do like him to be able to get some payback from time to time, he definitely can take things too far. Like the episode where Dewey gets a ferocious dog and uses it to keep the brothers and later Craig hostage to torture them. Although Craig was just collateral damage, he wasn't meant to be there. He was trying to get payback on his brothers, which is more valid. Or, like, he also goes a bit over the top in this episode. Dewey immediately goes from just getting Reese to do minor things to having him do all of his chores and just anything that Dewey wanted. It even begins causing issues with Allison, Reese's girlfriend, which almost blows up Dewey's whole plan when Allison tries to take the phone from Dewey to talk to Lois, but luckily she's just as dumb as Reese is. Finally, when Dewey tells Reese though that Lois wants him to buzz off his hair, Reese doesn't even really hesitate. He just says it's unfair and then kneels down and gets ready for the clippers. But Dewey got too cocky. He stopped using a machine to call, pretending it to be Lois, and so as Dewey is holding the phone to his ear, the phone begins to ring, and Reese realizes that this entire time he'd been duped. And then Reese, of course, threatens to shed Dewey's consciousness from his mortal corporeal shell. Which, yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think anyone would be pissed, but to be honest, Reese, if you were nicer to your brother, this likely would never have happened. While all of that is going down, we have Hal meeting up with his absolutely insane so-called friend named Larry. Larry is said to be a college buddy of Hal's that Lois dislikes because every time they get together, they do something crazy, which I'm sure won't happen this time, right? Right? Yeah, of course. No, nothing happened. Nothing bad at all. They just, wrecked Hal's home by tearing down a wall that luckily, thank God, wasn't load-bearing, leaving Hal and Lois's bedroom open to the elements. But don't worry, it's not all bad. After that, Larry talks up Hal into going and getting revenge on a guy named Dawkins. He whips up Hal into believing that the guy screwed them out of some money due to a water leak in a kitchen they worked in back in the day, and supposedly this guy lives in a nice fancy home now, and they want the money they were supposedly screwed out of. But when Hal and Larry actually arrive to the guy's house, they find that he doesn't live in a nice home, he lives in a trailer park. But hey, I mean, he still wronged them and took their money, right? Well, actually, the guy was super kind instantly, recognized them, and invited them in for tea, where upon discussion, Hal realizes that actually they caused the water leak, and the guy gave them their paycheck anyway at the risk of losing his job. So the guy did not screw them over. He's just a really good guy. And so, okay, well, at least they didn't do anything to exact revenge, right? So they just sat here and had some tea. Well, no, Larry actually rams straight into the guy's trailer on the way out, causing the whole thing to collapse right where the guy was sitting. And you know the worst part of the entire fucking mess I just described? The worst part is Dawkins' first statement is asking if the boys were all right.
Well, I hope we both learned something here. Oh, yeah. What the hell is wrong with you? I'm the tiger, Hal.
Hal, are you boys all right?
While he's trapped under rubble, this poor man is thinking about everybody else. He is so nice and innocent. How could you do this, Larry, you monster? I'll be damned. Lois was right. Who would have thunk it? The guy is a supervillain. But hey, I guess it was all worth it. You know, it should not take his friend almost killing a man for Hal to realize the guy's a monster, but you take what you get, I suppose. But now back to the primary storyline I'm here to discuss. Dabney's birthday is shown to be a quite depressing scene. Stevie and Malcolm are the only two that showed up to the party at all, and every moment is painstakingly awful. We first see that Dabney's mother had the boys sit around to watch Dabney's birth. Yes, that's right, she makes her teenage son and his friends watch her push him out of her every year, which I'm starting to understand why no one shows up to these parties. I mean, look, birth is a beautiful thing, but not when you think you're getting a chill birthday party and instead get the nightmare from hell. So in order to get away from the terrible scenes unfolding on the TV, they asked to move to do presents. Thank God Mrs. Hooper approves, and by the way, I think I've been calling her Mrs. Hooper this whole time, but as far as we know, she has no husband or even boyfriend. But I am going to continue calling her Mrs. Hooper, thank you. When the boys get over to do the presents, Dabney's first choice is the largest gift on the table, which is fair, and upon opening it, he finds a paintball gun that came from his grandfather. Immediately, Dabney's mom jumps into insanity and descends on her child to take away the gift that he just received, yanking it away much to Dabney's dismay. And she says that gifts like these will keep you up until 9 p.m., which, man, Dabney is a teenager. What the are we talking about 9 p.m.? Like, he's not allowed to do any normal teenager things that we know of, and his whole life seems to be dictated by his mother, who seems to hate him. It's super depressing. Well, hates him outside of what he can do for her, but anyway. Speaking of that, this next scene is where it turns from depressing to outright disgusting. One of the gifts on the table for Dabney was, of course, from his mother. And what was that gift, you might ask? Because this is Dora the Explorer, and you're talking at the screen a lot for some reason. A hairbrush. Huh, well, that's a little anticlimactic. You know, what's wrong with that? Well, you see, it wasn't for Dabney to brush his own hair.
Why don't you open one of my gifts?
A new hairbrush. Thanks, Mom.
Want to give it a try?
Sure.
Count down from 100. You boys can help.
100, 99, 98, 97.
Yeah, that's right. Dabney's gift from his mom is a hairbrush so he can brush her hair for her, which clearly his mother seems to think is a normal thing to do, considering she's having it done in front of his friends, but I assure you, it is not normal, especially not at his age, and I mean, look at his face! There is valid emotional intimacy in familial ways, and you know, that can be hugging sometimes, or maybe brushing someone's hair now and again, but for her to force it upon him, especially when he seems this uncomfortable, and to do so on what seems like is a regular basis is absolutely insane. Bro is a victim, and I feel so bad for him. Also, he already has a rough social life. I mean, luckily Stevie and Malcolm are good kids, and they're not gonna go run and tell everybody, but goddamn, imagine if they weren't. It's like his mom wants to ruin his life, and honestly, she probably does want that, so that way she can have a slave around to do things that really her husband should be doing. The next time we see Dabney, we find that he really is is his mother's caretaker, to the point he's tweezing something on her face and has like a whole in-house spa setup that he uses on her. Upon hearing a knock at the door, Dabney's mom goes to shower, and when Dabney answers the door, he finds that it's Malcolm who has come all this way to convince Dabney that he needs to have some fun, that he shouldn't just be relegated to being his mother's caretaker, which is very true. Malcolm says that he knows Dabney wants to use the paintball gun that his grandpa got him, so they should go do it now. Dabney then tries to appeal to Malcolm in what is again another disgusting moment. Dabney says the following. Yep, he says to Malcolm that his mother will be waiting for him when she gets out of the shower and he has to be there with a warm, cozy towel.
Malcolm, you don't understand. In exactly 17 minutes, she's gonna open that shower door and expect to see me there with a warm, cozy towel. All right, let's go.
Which means, one, this is so normalized that he doesn't even realize how wrong the statement is before he says it. It's also so normalized that he just does it without thinking because it's what you have to do for your mother in his household, which is just weird. And 3, usually the towel is what you get when you're fresh out the shower nude. So to me, this reads as a deeply, deeply inappropriate situation that Dabney has been told is normal, but deep down he knows it's not. Which is why, right after he makes that statement and hears himself, he decides he will indeed go with Malcolm. And quickly, I just want to address what it is that I think is actually happening with Dabney and his mom. Do I think that they are actually in an inappropriate relationship physically? I mean, I don't know. It's already bad that I have to ask that question, but like, I'm not gonna say yeah for sure. It just definitely looks extremely weird. Also, somebody pointed out that their last name is Hooper, and considering the references to films or film stars in the show, like Hellboy or the Busey, it definitely could be possible that their family name is a nod to Tobe Hooper, who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which has those types of inappropriate relationships. But ultimately, while them having a physically inappropriate relationship would definitely be significantly worse and absolutely vile, we can still condemn the weird relationship they have right now. If there is no physical thing happening here, then what I think we're witnessing is covert. I can't say the other word, but look at the screen if you're not already, and you'll know what I'm talking about. These types of relationships are characterized by a parent utilizing their child to fulfill their emotional intimacy needs in place of a husband, wife, or lover, or boyfriend or girlfriend. And obviously, these relationships are deeply damaging to the child, particularly because often while the parent tries to groom the child to be the perfect person to fulfill their emotional needs, they often also sabotage their child in other ways so that they can't find someone else in the future and leave them. And they don't have the social skills required to go out and live a normal life, making them more dependent on their bad parent. And I think it is very clear that this is at the very least what we're seeing with Dabney and his mom, if not something worse. We next see Dabney with Malcolm and Stevie at paintball, and at first he seems to really not like it. He tries to use his mom's tuck and cower method, and obviously in paintball that's not gonna work. However, after a pep talk from Malcolm trying to get Dabney to man up, his words, not mine, we see that once Dabney pulls the trigger once on that paintball gun, he is off to the races. He is a madman who is finally letting loose years of pent-up anger and rage from all of that forced hairbrushing, and it seems like he finally broke from his mom's spell. But of course, we have to have one last repulsive scene with Dabney and his mom, probably the grossest of them. Dabney's mom enters the paintball arena screaming about her delicate boy and where is he, and when she sees Malcolm, she says that she knew she shouldn't let Dabney have any friends.
What have you done with my poor delicate boy? Oh my God! This is your fault, you evil little Svengali! I knew I shouldn't let Dabney have any friends!
Clarifying for sure that she was trying to sabotage Dabney from ever having a life of his own, so that way she can keep using him for whatever she needs. Then when Dabney sees his mom, he gets a bit stern and tells her to get in the car and that he's not her little boy anymore, he's her little man.
Now, Dabney,
Get in the car. We're going home.
Dabney, you've never spoken to me like this before.
Well, get used to it. I'm not your little boy anymore, Mom. I'm your little man.
To which Dabney's mom gets flustered and goes, "Oh my, Dabney, you've never spoken to me like that, oh my."
Oh, my. Oh, Dad.
Yeah, very Michael Jackson-esque, okay? And essentially starts absolutely swooning over him. Which, thank God, this is the last scene with them, because I do not want to know what happened when they got home. As mentioned earlier, the only thing that we haven't really hit on is Francis and his very strange side story. Essentially, what we find is that Gretchen, Otto's wife, has left town for a while, and Otto cannot sleep alone because it makes him very anxious. So Gretchen leaves a note for Francis to read urgently, but of course Francis, being Francis, decides to read it later, and the letter falls under the bed unbeknownst to him. Now, the first super weird thing is Otto sleeps completely naked.
This is sort of weird. I haven't had a sleepover since I was in the 3rd grade. I was at Jeffrey Feldman's house, and his mom, Otto, what the hell are you doing?
Oh, I know. I am a notorious blanket hog.
Yeah, Otto!
Oh, sorry. Popsicle toes.
And I don't mean he makes a comment to Francis about how it sucks he has to sleep with clothes on now. I mean Otto gets in the bed naked and does not care about Francis's protests. This entire situation absolutely breaks a handful of laws and makes me deeply uncomfortable, and Francis should absolutely have sued. After Otto accidentally, and yes, I'm putting that in air quotes if you can't hear it in the tone of my voice, brushes his piece against Francis, which is exceedingly weird and gross, it only gets worse when Otto falls asleep and begins screaming at the top of his lungs for the entire night like Freddy Krueger has been hunting the man through his dreams.
What was in that note?
And he clutches onto Francis and, of course, prevents him from getting any sleep. Francis correctly deduces that the letter Gretchen left must have been regarding Otto's night terrors, and of course, he tries to search for the letter everywhere but can't find it. And really, my biggest question here is, why did Francis not simply refuse to allow Otto to sleep with him after night 1? Your boss cannot force you to sleep with them as a point of employment, and Otto should understand this, but I guess he doesn't. Finally, Francis checks under the bed and learns the secret to life, the universe, and everything is to rub Otto's earlobe. I don't know why this works, but it doesn't even really seem like it would help Francis because he has to keep rubbing Otto's earlobe to keep him from screaming, it seems. So Francis still couldn't get any sleep, or maybe you just rub it for a bit and then it stops. And no, I'm not going to make a weird joke based off that last sentence. And it is overall a funny storyline, but it is definitely the weirdest ranch storyline that there is, and there's a lot of weird stuff in that storyline. So within this episode, there are some seriously strange moments. Francis being made to sleep with his boss is already an insane story, and it's weird and a little uncomfortable at times, but for the most part, it's the typical insanity I'd expect. For Dewey and Reese, it really often is just a cat and mouse game between the two, trying to get each other back and forth, with Dewey being at a disadvantage due to him being smaller and younger. So seeing him level the playing field sometimes is great, but he does go overboard at times, and that always seems to be his downfall. Hal is of course shown once again to be an extremely easily influenced individual, but he finally realizes that he should blindly trust Lois on certain things like who to trust and who to not trust, which so far Lois has not seemed to lead him astray, and when Hal did try to not listen to her, he basically got led into an attempted murder and destroyed his own home. So yeah, stick with listening to Lois, Hal. And when it comes to Dabney's super strange relationship with his mom, I genuinely feel so uncomfortable when he brushes her hair or she swoons over him. It feels deeply wrong, and particularly the ending. I can't understand interpreting it in any other way than Dabney's mom being turned on by him talking to her like that. Also, I think it's important that we keep our eye on some of these things with people you may know. Obviously, Dabney and his mom are an extreme example, but if you have a friend that seems to be fulfilling all their parents' needs at the expense of their own lives, social or otherwise, then that's something that should be called out and
stop. And we certainly shouldn't normalize some of these things under like being a mama's boy. There's nothing wrong with having a good, healthy relationship with your parent, but when your parent hampers your ability to lead a normal life, it's no longer healthy. And ultimately, I feel really bad for Dabney, a kid who is not allowed to be a normal kid and who has been sabotaged by their parent at every turn is just really saddening and gross. So what's your favorite and least favorite part of this episode? Let me know in the comments down below, and let me know what you think overall. Do you completely disagree with me and think I'm stupid? Let me know in the comments. Also, check out the Patreon for the reactions to the new Malcolm in the Middle series, which should be going up within the next few days. So for that, go to patreon.com/smokinsessions for all the content ad-free and extra content for as little as $2 a month. And anyway guys, my name is Crazy Rocky, and this has been a Smokin' Session.